Unit 2, Information Security Governance and Risk Management Part 2. We're going to talk about general management in this set of slides. The basics of management. Components of management are the mission, goals, and objectives of the organization. The mission is the overall reason for the organization's existence. Goals are what must be accomplished long-term to ensure the organization can best meet the mission. And the objectives are time-bound standards to judge success in meeting goals. Objectives tend to be project-oriented. The tools of management include policies, planning, procedures, and standards. Policies are far-reaching organization-wide guidelines. Planning is related to projects, includes their definition, the purpose of projects, marshaling the resources necessary to accomplish project goals, and so forth. Procedures are generally related to ongoing non-project maintenance work, detailed steps on how to do something. Standards are a measure of compliance, or better yet, quality. How do you know if the plans and procedures are successful? The specific use of technology in certain ways, uniform methodologies, can define standards. You may also in cases have guidelines. These are sort of like standards, except they are advisory, not mandatory. The difference being is if you violate a standard, you need an official documented exception, whereas if you decide not to follow a guideline, you do not need to document and gain management approval of that exception. Now, organization and management levels. Management levels are conventionally defined as strategic, tactical, or operations. So the strategic level of management involves planning for the organization's long-term, 5-10 years down the road. How do you meet the mission of the organization? The tactical level of management deals with planning to accomplish a medium-term goal or a project. It's often project-oriented, or it deals with what sort of goals ongoing operations may need to meet in a specific, medium-sized time frame, typically a budgetary cycle. And in the operations level of management involves supervision of processes. It's the planning the day-to-day work. It's following procedures. Top levels of management drive the lower levels of management, ensure that they're consistent with the organization's missions and the strategic goals through control mechanisms. In turn, the lower level of management pass up to the next level information about their actual accomplishment of their goals or objectives, allowing the next level of management up the ability to adjust resources and planning and processes and procedures in order to make things better. Management is all about steering a ship. You need to know where the ship is going in order to know how to steer it. The steering is the control, the where you are going is the information. Now, management levels. The top level of management is the board of directors. Underneath them are executive management, the chiefs. Among these are the chief information officer concerned with systems. You may have a chief privacy officer for privacy regulatory compliance, a chief security officer where security is all consolidated under a single executive director. You may have a security steering committee, which isn't exactly a chief but is an organization of other managers to guide security practices. An audit committee existing outside of the formal hierarchy to ensure that the entire system is working properly and in compliance. And then you have conventional roles that people don't own these titles, but they assume these roles because of what they do. And generally these roles are held by managers at some level in the organization. Data owners, responsible for certain sorts of data, and data custodians, who have to handle and manage the data per the data owner's requirements. Now, the board of directors is elected by shareholders to oversee the overall governance of the organization and ensure it governs in the interest of the shareholders. For organizations that don't have shareholders, you may have stakeholders or elected officials for government entities, and these assume the same role. They assure protection of shareholders' interest. Private corporations that are traded on public stock exchanges are required to be compliant with Sarbanes-Oxley. Under Sarbanes-Oxley, the board of directors are held personally responsible for corporations' governance frameworks and the accuracy of financial statements. They can literally lose their shirts if the organization is not in compliance with the law. Now, executive management reports to the board of directors. They are the chiefs: chief operating officer, chief financial officer, Chief Executive Officer, who's the chief of all the chiefs, they are responsible for aligning management underneath them with shareholder interests, and they report to shareholders via the board of directors. The Chief Information Officer is responsible for the strategic use and overall management of information systems. Most organizations, this individual reports to the Chief Executive Officers. In certain cases, this person may report to a Chief Financial Officer or some other chief officer that then reports to the CEO. Chief Privacy Officer is a newer position. It results from regulatory pressures and laws requiring organizations maintain the privacy of personal information and sanctioning organizations if they violate privacy regulations. This is a compliance position. They're responsible for legal and regulatory privacy compliance. The Chief Security Officer is responsible for overall organizational security risk management. This is in cases where organizations align their various security disciplines, facility security, personnel security, information technology security, and so forth, under a single entity. You will then have an executive responsible for this across organizations. The Security Steering Committee is a cross-organizational group composed of representatives of various other arms of the organizations. Could include legal, could include privacy, could include audit, obviously includes information technology, to help facilitate decisions on strategic and tactical security issues and ensure the alignment of security practices with the organization's management and processes. The Audit Committee reports directly to the Board of Directors and supervises the internal audit teams and works with external auditors. They review internal controls over operations and financial systems, working with independent auditors, and ensures legal and regulatory compliance. They are entirely independent of the other chiefs in the organization. It would be a conflict of interest for the auditors to report up a normal operational chain of command. Now, data owners, this is a responsibility that many managers in an organization may assume at many levels. It's a business manager responsible for specific information resources. This manager has due care responsibilities and accountability for negligence in handling data. If something goes wrong, this is the individual in the organization that is accountable. They are accountable for data classification, for determining and signing off on the sensitivity, criticality of data, and for defining the recovery requirements for data. If a system goes down, how quickly must the data be recovered and made available? So the data owner is responsible for management decisions about data. The data custodian follows the direction of the data owner and maintains and protects the data on behalf of the data owner. They follow the directions in executing their protections. Personnel security often is handled by human resources, but can also be the responsibility of other parts of the organization. They're responsible for organizing and defining individual roles, describing and creating lists of job descriptions within the organization, who does what, and in organizing the roles, they may need to keep into account certain sorts of control and security principles. There is first off separation of duties, splitting critical operations into multiple discrete roles so that a single individual can't do something bad and then also cover it up. Preventing collusion, separating individuals who work together, making it harder for them to collaborate to do things they're not supposed to. Split knowledge, which is splitting the knowledge of how to do something among multiple individuals, again as a control measure. Dual control, where it takes two people to do a single individual task. This is distinct from separation of duties. In separation of duties, one task is split into multiple tasks that have to be done independently. In dual control, you need two or more individuals to do a single task itself. And in rotation of duties, rotating roles among various individuals in an organization to reduce the risk of fraud. Sometimes this may involve mandatory vacations, which, believe me, is one of my favorite internal control mechanisms. They are also responsible for hiring practices, how you vet individuals who are hired into the organization, determine whether or not they meet particular roles in the organization, and so forth. They oversee termination of individuals, both voluntary termination as well as involuntary, which is very important for security purposes. When an individual is no longer a member of your organization, their access needs to be terminated, and you need to ensure that they're not taking any valuables out with them. And then lastly, personnel security also involves keeping individuals in the organization aware of their responsibilities, including their responsibilities for information security. This may involve mandatory annual training that folks have to undergo, as well as exercises where you simulate a security breach and require folks to appropriately respond so they know what they're supposed to do. Governance. This is the big G. Ensure security goals are properly supported by all layers of management, and management mechanisms reinforce these goals. Governance is ensuring that management and the operations of the organization are run consistently to support the mission of the organization and the interest of stakeholders. It's making sure everything is a consistently running, well-oiled machine that serves this purpose. It empowers individuals at the correct level. Make sure that managers at the tactical level in fact have the authority to perform what's required of them, and that individuals who are actually performing the job likewise have the authority to do the job well and consistent with the organization's goals. And it ensures that accountability is appropriate to the level, that folks are held accountable based on where they are in the organization and what their formal layers are. You don't want upper-level managers washing their hands of accountability, and you don't want lower-level individuals being made scapegoats for things that they don't actually have control over. That's bad governance. And also ensuring that the systems of the organization, information systems as well as manual systems, support management accountability. This isn't just information security. This is, the entire framework of systems. Those secure systems tend to support accountability much better. Making sure that individual projects and programs work together to reinforce a security program endorsed by executive management is a component of governance affecting the security program. Metrics, measuring things. This is an important aspect of management. How do you know if you're accomplishing your goals, your objectives, or your mission if you can't measure your progress towards that goal? Are we there yet? You can't manage what you can't measure is an important fact about this. Management support must be behind these metrics and must ensure that their reporting and use is consistent. Metrics have to be integrated into processes. The processes of executing the business should automatically generate the metrics by which success is measured. Metrics should be used effectively for management decision-making at the proper level. Data collection must be repeatable. Different individuals collecting the same data and compiling it should come up with the same results. A metric that's not repeatable is a metric that has dubious value and may not actually reflect what it's supposed to be measuring. And they must be comparable period to period. If you're measuring current period metrics and saying things have improved or have gotten worse by a certain percent, that implies that the prior period was collected using mechanisms that are consistent. There are some standards out there that help define metrics. ISO 27004, part of the ISO 27000 security package of standards, and that colon 2009 means it's a 2009 version. And the National Institute of Standard and Technology 855 also defines metrics for use within the civilian federal government sector. The end.